and I'm not going to stand here at the podium. So we're first going to hear from a member of the California Assembly, Tom Ammiano. Then we'll hear from Theshia Naidoo from the Drug Policy Alliance. She'll be followed by Joe Elford from Americans for Safe Access. And our concluding speaker will be Sheriff Thomas Allman, the Sheriff of Mendocino, California. Mendocino County, California. Assemblymember Tom Ammiano has been the president of the Board of Education for San Francisco. He served for many years on the Board of Supervisors and was the president of the Board of Supervisors in 2002. He is now a member of the Assembly and the chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. In the last session, he introduced a bill to legalize marijuana, and there's another bill that he introduced then at the beginning of this year, and I apologize that I failed to write that down.
2254.
2254. So, without further ado, California Assemblymember Tom Ammiano. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and thank you. That was a very edifying discussion. You know, I think being elected, sometimes you take stuff and you just reduce it. And really, it is all about political will. If the political will is there, and even if it starts in a populist manner, as many social justice issues have, and the people lead, and those who enact laws, etc., feel that pressure or respond to it, even if there are obstacles, there are ways around it. And one of those ways is to ignore it. Now, that has happened in a number of California's banking laws. There are a number of banking laws in California that are in the same manner, or on a parallel, preempted by federal laws. But no one says very much about those, unless there is an investigation or a whistleblower, or you want to focus on Mr. Rangel instead of the banks. It's a good distraction. So that's the relativity of these issues. The other thing is that I'm struck about, first of all, I want to thank you all and the organizers for recognizing the dignity of the hotel workers and moving your forum here. Thank you. That's a good one. And again, the Prop 8 decision, of course, is very significant, and we're all extremely hopeful. And the parallels that were referred to Prop 8 and this issue are very strong in my mind, because you really have to change a mindset. You have to change agitprop for years and years and years. I remember reefer madness, all of us from a certain age, and I remember when reefer madness was shown in the 60s to great howls of laughter and ridicule here in San Francisco, which in a sense was not a sea change, but somewhat seminal in the changing of what people really care about. People have really been made to care about marijuana with the scare tactics, etc., and so forth. But there is a generational shift, and I think that the initiative recognizes that. My legislation recognized the potential of an initiative and worked very well with Richard Lee on how a piece of legislation can morph. There's the possibility with the stronger polls showing a win and a positive reaction, that the legislature will be a lot more user-friendly, no pun intended, as they were not to medical marijuana. Medical marijuana passed, that was it, there's no questions, we thought. And then everyone came up with gray areas and challenges, and in going to the legislature, we got a cold shoulder. So if, in fact, legislation and initiative are not the perfect, meet every criteria, every criticism of those who are knowledgeable or who have been involved in the industry for a long time, I ask you to look at what the option is. which is the continued persecution of people for small amounts, lives ruined, prisons overcrowded. And I need to tell you that one of the reasons I introduced this legislation is that not only because I'm committed to the issue, but because it's tethered to many other issues, and that is prison reform, and that is sentencing reform. And I get the same resistance to that from the moderate Dems and the Republicans and other grand poobahs and mugwumps in Sacramento, as I do, to, hey man, we need to legalize this shit. And the hypocrisy is, if you had a hallway vote on legalization or decriminalization, there'd be no problem. But in the year or so that I have, since I've introduced it, and it got out of public safety, which is a good thing, that's the first time ever, and so that was a good sign. And then, of course, as soon as it got out of public safety, other obstacles stood in the way, with this very Byzantine, Kafkaesque, process we have with deadlines and, who's dyspeptic at that moment and everything. I have two words for everybody: rule waivers, rule waivers, rule waivers. In Sacramento, we can waive any fucking rule that we want. So that's where the political will comes in. And so in that year and a half, the presence of the initiative, first as potential, then qualifying, now on the ballot, now getting a number. And by the way, we have a hearing. I'm sure that Richard knows that anytime a ballot measure or initiative qualifies, rather, you must have a hearing on it. So we will be having a hearing in August sometime. So my office will let you know. So what has happened is there is more sympathy in Sacramento. Not to say there isn't resistance. I do have some co-authors. I have a Republican co-author. Of course, he is of a libertarian bent, which is good, because you look at the raw material you have, and then you try to shape it in a way that will result in a positive response. We could do this, and there is a precedent. We could look at that initiative and say, well, it's going to pass, and where is the legislature going to be, and how long is it going to take for the legislature to respond, and how long will we land on our feet or not? We could, and I am pushing this, and do something called contingency legislation. Years ago, there was something on the ballot, I don't remember the topic, and the legislature wrote some legislation that if the initiative passed, which it did, this legislation would be, in a sense, welcoming. This legislation would be accommodating. You can't, if the initiative passes, you can't undermine the initiative. But there are a lot of role for the state in that. For instance, in the initiative, it calls for local opt-outs. My legislation does not do that. And I could say, I could get all finicky and pissy and say, well, too bad, But no, this is an honest, populist, grassroots attempt. The Courage Campaign got 20,000 pledges to vote for this in 2 days. So the legislature needs to wake up, and the governor needs to wake up. Now the governor, and about 2 hours ago, after vetoing the gay marriage issue twice, now says gay people should get married. Thank you very much. Where the fuck were you when we really needed you? But I'm gonna take that as a positive thing. So who knows what he might toss out in and around the marijuana issue? He actually said something that was more promising than the big no that you get. So if, in fact, I can convince the leadership, and right now I haven't had a chance to talk to the pro tem, Darrell Steinberg, who was not actively supportive, to see where he would be on this, and because it would have to start in the Senate. John Perez, the new speaker, is very supportive. So this, I don't want to get too elaborate, but this contingency legislation could be very helpful to us. The hook would be in getting the 41 votes from the people who are afraid of this issue. And I will tell you, while there is more sympathy and there is more support than when we started, or at least when the legislation started, than before, there is a blank look of terror. on the faces of my colleagues when I go. It's gonna pass. Orange County did a editorial, in favor of it. What do we need to do? They would rather get out of it. So I think if we have the legislation ready, the initiative passes, we could possibly have a special session, or the governor could call it, and we could get the 41 votes necessary to get the legislation moving. Because I've been working with Betty Yee. They said we have one more minute, so but I've been working with Betty Yee, the head of the Board of Equalization, about taxing structure and all that, and what can happen in Sacramento. How could this? Because this is a seductive part of the equation, is our economy. How can this help the state? And let me tell you, when we go around and talk about the initiative and the legislation, there's now 10, 15 people deep waiting to talk to us, and it's all with business ideas. So you think the fucking Chamber of Commerce is going to turn its back on this issue? No. I know that's repellent to some of us, and I know it's not exactly what we're all about. But it is the real world, and we do have people in the federal government, just not RuPaul, or what's his name? Maybe it's Barney Frank. Thinking about it. So we do need a perfect storm. One other thing before I go, the priority. It's all here in San Francisco. We said on the ballot for the police, it cannot be a priority to bust small marijuana crimes, and pretty much that has worked. And so that's the same thing with the federal government. They don't always have to make it a priority. And lastly, the presence of the initiative on the ballot will definitely